Namaskar, and today in Samvad we have a very interesting guest. Interesting because he's an advocate, an intellectual property attorney who is also a geopolitical expert. So this is a rarity. And he is with a Niti Shastra platform, which blends Indian wisdom to statecraft and economic philosophy. He has co-authored three books on foreign policy, international relations, conflicts, geopolitics, geoeconomics, and diplomacy. Now, I personally came to know him through his wonderful posts on X. So let me introduce Shri Navroop Singh. Welcome to Samvad, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir. My pleasure.
Navroopji, what we have been following and you have been posting regularly on it is that last 24 hours have been bizarre. Now, past few months have also been bizarre, but these 24 hours have been even more bizarre. I mean, first, President Donald Trump and his Commerce Secretary Lutnick, who at times to me looks like a WWE wrestler, more like the way he behaves, the way he speaks. So they announced this $100,000 payment for H-1B visa, and it was applicable to even those who were already visa holders for the new ones, and it was an annual fees. Now, within 24 hours, things have changed, and it is only applicable to the new entrants to this scheme, and that too not annually. Now, help us understand this confusion. What exactly is going on?
So, sir, I'll take you to, we have to understand that in short, that why this is happening. Number one, why this sudden outburst and then sudden flip-flop of friendship, flip-flop of targeting. So, sir, the issue is that the Americans have been through decades have been deindustrialized over waves of deindustrialization ever since they reduced the dollar peg, and they had to run the trade deficit since 1971 after the Nixon depegged it from gold. So they had multiple waves of deindustrialization. First it was Germany in 70s, then Japan in the 80s, then China in the 90s and 2000, then Vietnam, then India. So, their economy is totally hollowed out. It is based on few pillars of financial services, banks, mortgage lending, bonds backed by the dollar, right? And technology firms, which are the hallmark of American prowess these days, specifically the Mag 7, which we know run the majority of the US economy, US market value. Now, over and above that, suddenly they realize that their debt to GDP has exploded from 35% to 100% from 2005 onwards, especially after general financial crisis of 2007 2008. Their deficits have gone to almost 7%. And plus the debt has reached $36 trillion, which is almost, as I said, 100%. So this has become now unsustainable, so much so that they had to pay 7 trillion. They had to renew $7 trillion of debt at a very high interest rate this August, September. So one, the economy is financially broken. It is dependent upon few sectors. You don't have the hard industrial base, the aluminum, the steel, the automobile sector, the pharma, the semiconductor. It's non-existent in US, and that is why this administration, which is I call it the nationalist wing of the GOP, which mirrors or wants to epic the 1880s and the 1780s, who want to mirror the policies of the 19th century, right? They want to reindustrialize and reshore America. Now, for that to happen, countries across the world would have to deindustrialize, specifically in Indo-Pacific. Which means the manufacturing powers of China, India, Vietnam, Japan, Korea, Bangladesh, all these countries who manufacture at a very low factor of cost of production will have to ultimately supply to US. At they have to lose their industrial prowess for US to regain its industry back.
Mm.
So this is how on so to how to do this, how to get out of the debt trap, how to save dollar, because there was an alternate block forming, let's say BRICS plus, where there was a non, I won't say alternate block, a non-dollar trading block had formed specifically after the Ukraine war, when the Russian assets were confiscated by the Americans.
Mm.
They realized, the world realized, it was dangerous to rely on the US Treasury reserves, and people started selling US Treasury. The Chinese Treasury holding has gone down from $1.3 trillion to almost $700 billion. India is down to almost $220 billion. Russians have already reduced it, and all the central banks are piling up gold like crazy.
Mm.
So they see a move where India and Russia are trading in rupee ruble, where Russia and China are doing in yuan,
Mm.
where Iran and China are doing in yuan, the commodities trade, or the oil trade and everything. The Saudis have also agreed to trade in yuan, right, with
Mm.
China
Mm.
in addition to petrodollar, not
Mm.
in alternative, but in addition to petrodollar as well, right? They have refused to do. So US suddenly saw that its grip on the international order is slipping.
Mm.
And that is exactly when they decided that they needed a geopolitical reset, a geoeconomic reset. And this is where the Stephen Miran, who's the chief economic advisor of the Trump administration at this minute, he wrote a paper called Restructuring the Global Trade in November 2024.
Mhm.
And he laid out the specific plans that we need to divide the world into categories of allies and treaty allies, neutrals, and adversaries.
Mm.
And then we need to get the allies and the friends locked in as our trade territories.
Mhm.
Neutrals who swing between, who trade with both sides, right? And adversaries who are trying to create alternate systems,
Mm.
right? Plus, they said, okay, we need to inflate our way out of debt, because that is the only way we can reduce the GDP, which is why, along with the Federal Reserve, they are going for financial repression. Keep the rates low, even if it means inflation is higher. We don't care. This has happened earlier on between 47 to 64, when inflation went up to almost 14%, but US continued that path so that debt to GDP can come down from 100 to 24. Keep the US economy hot. But that is the other consequence of doing this is, by financial repression, that the US middle class loses because their purchasing power goes down with the asset bubble getting built up, with inflation constantly running high. So they lose the purchasing power.
Mm.
Plus, they said, okay, now what we will do is we will also launch a 50-year gold back. We will do a gold revaluation of the gold at the Fort Knox. That
Mhm.
will debase the dollar. Then we will launch a 50-year-old or half century bond, partially backed by the gold, in
Mm.
2026, when is the 250th anniversary of the American independence. And that time, that will be sent to allies, that they will not be tradable once redeemable after 50 years, since it is gold backed. So
Mm.
then the Americans would have the ability to get money from abroad, because people will buy the American long-term bonds, right?
Mm.
Backed by gold. So they will get trillions of dollars into the system, keep the long-term interest rate low. On the other side, using the stable coins backed by the US Treasury, they will keep the short-term interest rate low and do hyper-dollarization to counter China's BRI and EU1 payment settlement system and KIPS payment settlement system. So it's a multi-pronged strategy which they are following. There's a blueprint behind it. And then they say that we are going to impose price controls and even capital controls.
Mhm.
That means remittances will be taxed, which is going to begin the next year onward. Like suppose the Indian diaspora wants to send money into back, a certain amount will be allowed to send.
Hmm.
The money which you earn from America should be invested in America. America first. This is what Howard Lutnick and Scott Bessent is going to say few months down the lane.
Hmm.
Similarly, they also say कि apart from this, we will also the access to American technology, semiconductors, GPUs, chips, defense technology sharing, capital controls, how much lending can be done, everything will be limited outside the American sphere of influence.
Hmm.
Right?
Hmm.
That means country who swing neutrally, who trade with both sides, will not get the full access. And India is one part of that swing. A different pole, a third pole between the two bigger poles of America and China, who are creating their own supply chains.
Hmm.
China is doing supply chain via BRI, rare earths, ECNY, KIPS payment settlement system, integrating China, North Korea, Iran, and all these countries in its periphery, Southeast Asia. America is creating its own supply chain.
Hmm.
But this trade war, what happened in the last couple of months, it made us realize that America doesn't have the whole cards because they don't have the rare earth leverage. They
Hmm.
need consumer market for their tech. They need consumer market for their companies. And this is where two countries become very critical for this trade reset to become successful. Three countries, actually.
Hmm.
One is Russia. Why? Because they want to use the Kissinger reverse doctrine to split Russia and China,
Hmm.
like 1971, get Russia on board, settle Ukraine so that they can isolate China. On the other side, they want India on board because it's the largest consumer market. China is an export market, not a consumer market.
Hmm.
There's a huge difference, which is why these Howard Lutnicks and this Scott Bessents and Navarro's, what they don't know is you cannot destroy India by tariff because India is not an export-driven economy.
Hmm.
Our export to America is only 2.2% of GDP. And if you count out the exempted sector, it is hardly 0.5 basis point. So now, given all this reset, they want India on their side at any cost. Which is why this maximalist pressure campaign has begun ever since July.
Hmm.
And why? Because they want India to open their agriculture and dairy sector,
Hmm.
GMO, right?
Hmm.
And non-veg feed for dairy. No government in India since 1991 can ever do this because this will be akin to a political suicide,
Hmm.
surrendering your food security, and even like non-veg food to dairy. Cattle we rever in our cows we revel in our. How can we even feed non-veg feed to them? It's it's certainly impossible for them to sink. And then they want the trade barriers gone, non-trade barriers like data localization, please switch it off. E-commerce rules, please remove it. Why should we do you have placed fintech rules for UPI that must be dismantled. You have put pharma rules, patenting compulsory licensing that must also be removed. Everything we remove. Basically they want to convert you into a vassal state, a trade territory, aka the new form of colonization of the East India Company. This is the whole blueprint.
So how does America think in this age and era where everybody is actually it's quite egalitarian right now? It's very difficult to understand. I mean, the way you have been explaining things, there are times where I've been wondering that America is itself sort of turning protectionist. I'm not. It is isolating itself. China has suddenly, you must have seen it on X, that they have opened their door for STEM professionals. They want people inside. So it's a reverse. America grew on inclusiveness. It brought people from all around the world and then grew. Now they want to isolate people because this is arm twisting. This maximalist position will not be acceptable to any Indian politician. I mean, even the
Indeed.
opposition leaders, they might be crying horse right now. So how do they perceive that India? I mean, there must be something in their mind that India is going to yield on all these issues.
Okay. See, sir, their plan is very simple.
Hmm.
What they think is that India is financially and technologically very deeply linked with US ecosystem. whether the BFSI sector, banking, financial services. Basically, we run with the Federal Reserve. We do what they say. We follow the SWIFT system, the payment settlement system mainly, right? And then the technology sector, because because we have to admit that ever since 1990s, we opened up our economy, the tech has led the boom in Indian economy, and that is what has created the bustling Indian middle class. So what they are trying to do is they are trying to target. Now there is a specific targeting. Would they think that if they target the soft portions of Indian economy, they can they can force the government to bend? It's the belief, which is, you saw how Howard Lutnick few days back, just before Prime Minister Modi's birthday, and that sudden flip flop of the call of President Trump, he came and said, within 2 months, India will be there on our table and saying sorry to us, and then Trump will decide how to deal with Modi. That kind of arrogance reeks, that of the American exceptionalism. Oh, we are the world's largest economy, we are the biggest economy, you need us, we are your biggest customers. That they don't realize the reality. You are only 2.2% GDP. But the problem is you cannot tariff the IT services. And the MAGA base in America is, they have become the whipping tool, virtually, being used as useful idiots to whip up passions, to drive the policy agendas. Unfortunately, it has become a self-sustained cycle of the whole administration, which it is catering to that very base, which is targeting the Indian diaspora or even legally Indian, people who are working in H-1B. And if you understand the whole concept, what first 25%, okay, then they say 50% Russian crude. Then that doesn't make India bend. Then you say, Besant comes and said, India's richest family, alluding to Ambani. That doesn't bend. Then you move to what you say, after the SCO summit and the Tianjin pictures flashed, Donald Trump virtually had a meltdown in the White House, and he said, oh, we have lost India to deepest, darkest China. Right? So we saw all these statements coming, and then we saw, then suddenly, because the commentary went really hostile, we saw Navarro's comment, laundromat. And we know, you Americans have been buying, fertilizers, chemicals from Russia. You have been trading, the Europeans are buying LNG from them. So it is a very different, they don't realize, it is not about Russian oil. It is mainly about India not surrendering to the whims and fashion, the wish list of Washington, D.C. Not blending its foreign, trying to turn and blend Indian foreign policy into American strategic objective. How dare you go and do a detente with China? It runs against our pivot to Asia. How dare you import Russian arms? What about my F-35? Why are you going to France for Rafales? Why don't you take my F-35s? Why are you buying oil from Russia? Why not buy American LNG and oil? So there are lobbies which are behind Donald Trump, the fossil fuel lobby, the agrochemical lobby for agriculture, the dairy lobby, which have contributed mass to his campaign. So the agenda which the White House is running through, it is coming through those corporate lobbies, and he is forwarding that. He is ultimately a businessman. Who's forwarding? Who are the companies, who are the industries who wants to benefit out of it? And if you see corn and soybean, the Chinese are the biggest buyers of soybean from America. They have refused to lift. They have not lifted at all, and the American farmers are in peril, which is why they are putting the pressure in India that you please lift. Because otherwise, there will be a revolt in the American MAGA base, and Donald Trump will face huge problems in the midterms in 2026. They know time is running out, the winter is here, and the crop is lying idle. I saw videos from Arkansas, Illinois, the Midwest states, where the farmers are saying that 25% of the whole soybean was lifted by China. This time the Chinese have gone to Brazil and Argentina. So we are saying, where there is Russia, who is fighting, who is resisting against America and Ukraine, not acceding to Donald Trump's term. There is China, which is using the rare earth leverage, not picking soybean and fighting. There is India, which is resisting. There is Brazil, which is resisting, which is paying 50% tariffs. So you see a consortium of countries which have stood up to the American bullying and said, boss, this is not acceptable. And in India, why they are targeting this? There's a method to this madness. If you read Robert Lighthizer, who was the no trade is free. If you read his book, who is a mentor of Donald Trump, he wrote in his book that there are seven business tycoons, stroke oligarchs, which frame the policy along with the government. So if you want to get anything done, you get it through them. So which is why you target Adani, Department of Justice, you target Ambani, Russian oil, you will target the tech giants of TCS, Infosys, Wipro, Tata's, Infosys, Narayan Murthy's and everyone. And you try to coerce through them to impress upon the government to please modify the policy, else more will come. This is like the classical bully tactic, trying to use the leverage to put your point across. This is like negotiation tactic. But yesterday on H-1B, what happened? What they don't realize in H-1B, it was a genius visa, where you wanted to attract talent across the world to beg for high skill jobs. How many? I saw a commentary saying, oh, Indian IT, Indian IT and all that stuff. I read a bit commentary. Amazon, if you just read the, if you just read the, just a second, sir. Yeah. If you just read the figures, okay, Amazon has 10,444, what you say, your, which they have 2024 data, which the H-1B applications approved. Cognizant, Indian company, 6,321. Infosys 8,140, TCS 5,274, Microsoft 5,000, Alphabet 5,500, Meta 4,000, Apple 3,800, Intel 1,800, Tesla 1,700, JP Morgan Chase 1,000. So you see, it is not only Indian IT companies of TCS or Infosys. It is about Amazon, which is the largest recruiter. It is about IBM. It was about Intel. It is about Tesla. It is about Walmart. It is about Meta, it is about Google, everyone. Your famous tech CEOs went on, Satya Nadella went on H-1B. Elon Musk was on H-1B before he became the US citizen. So you've harnessed the best talent, and it is just not about tech. Even in the medical sector, in doctors and nurses, you have 16,000 H-1B people working over there. So knowing all this, it is, you suddenly say, this is not allowed, that is not allowed. You overnight, people, you re-enter by tomorrow morning or you're gone. And that led to panic. And which made, Microsoft, JP Morgan and other mail their employees, wherever you are, please reach within 24 hours. And there were no flights available because max 70% H-1B is from India. What the Americans don't understand is their education of skill-based education, their education standard, their training, their skill is not good. Your education system is broken after a decade. That will take time to solve. That is where the MAGA jobs are, not at the high-end level. 5,000 jobs of TCS or 4,000 jobs of Infosys are like not even a drop in the ocean for them per year. So and then when these big tech stepped in, they must have dialed the White House. We don't have the capacity to bring them back. And we can't do it. And then the White House walk backs. Oh, okay. Renewal, not attracted. Old ones, not attracted. The new ones, okay, only new ones. But even there, the White House, the president has put a clause, the new ones will be exempted. But there is a clause where the secretary can suspend this, can waiver this for specific firm. Fine, like Apple, people can gift a 1 kilo gold bar to the president, lobby with him, get an exemption.
But what happens to the reliability? Because great powers also need reliability. People need to rely on them because a great power simply cannot be a bully. A bully, it is not the days of the East India Company. So there must be some sort of thinking going on in America because it is evident to everybody except the Magabes and the administration in Washington. So what exactly do you think are they thinking?
Sir, their broad blueprint is that this Pax Americana global order, which was formed after World War II, is no more serving them. If you read Secretary Marco Rubio's testimonies in Senate, it clearly lays out that look, this order has not served us. We got the Chinese in the WTO. We tried to make them like us, but they did not become like us. Okay? And now you have these countries who have formed an axis of evil. He said China, Russia, Iran. He said all these countries who are not listening to us. So no, it's better we do away with this order. It is as simple as that. It is the slow crumbling or the decline of the Pax Americana order because you see, the Americans have withdrawn from WHO. WTO has been defunded. The appellate tribunals are not functioning. Even the trade appellate tribunals are not functioning. They are not part of UN Human Rights Commission. They don't care for the trade rules they themselves framed in 1990s through GATT and WTO. They don't agree to that.
Mm.
And which is why now they say that look, we sit between two oceans. And our limited sphere of influence has to be the Americas, North and South both. That is the classic Monroe doctrine which they want to apply, and the extended Monroe doctrine to the Europeans, transatlantic. Right? Which is why they're going after Brazil, they're going after Venezuela, they're going after all these Colombian cartels. Why? Because they want to secure their backyard first. No China, no China in Panama, no China in Greenland.
I'll intervene on that. I mean, now they want Bagram also. The Bagram airport has to be theirs, or there will be whatever the language sort of hell to pay. So on the one hand, you are, I mean, behaving in a very protectionist manner. You want to secure the mainland, the island, the mainland. And then on the other hand, you want to reach out and then get Bagram bills also. So why this paradox?
This paradox is because to reindustrialize, to reshore itself, America needs critical rare earths and resources. So, like an expeditionary force aimed with private mercenaries and private military contractors, America is now rushing into geographies, trying to ring fence China with chaos, trying to ring fence India with the countries who are resisting around with chaos, and geographies rich of rare earth minerals, which are critical for American industries to function.
But Navroop ji,
Like,
they have. I'm very sorry, I'm interacting, but I want to get more out of you. I mean, they have been in Afghanistan for a very long time. They were there for around 18 years. They have been in Pakistan since 1947. Very inception of Pakistan's Americans were there. So the rare earths were there. The so-called petroleum products were there. The so-called gas was there in Pakistan. But they never cared. Now suddenly they are retreating back into America and they want all of this in countries like Afghanistan and Pakistan. I don't understand this.
the pivot to Pakistan and Afghanistan, which has happened in the last few months, is backed by a very cold calculation where India is refusing to commit to America's anti China containment arc. It is refusing to be part of the Quad militarization. Right? It is saying that we have our own historical dispute with China, but we are capable of dealing with it. And India settled the dispute with China, not settled that status quo in Eastern Ladakh was reverted back to after what my sources tell me is through mediation of good officers of Moscow. So, which is why that led to a lot of heartburn in America that look, you are trying to countermand our strategy, which is containment of China. So what they do is now the policy of Americans, why Pakistan is critical, not only strategically and geographically, but it goes back to the old great game since the British Empire. They never wanted any communist power, be it the Russian imperial power during Queen Victoria's time, or the Soviet Union, to come down to the Persian Gulf and man those critical waters through which hydrocarbons, through which rare earth minerals can be shipped, those shipping lanes, right? And these countries, specifically China through CPEC and Gwadar, and Iran by signing that 25-year-old, 25 years, 400 billion dollar agreement with China, trading into yuan commodities, right? Commodities in yuan, created that environment, which is why they fought over Persia. The British fought over Persia with Russia. Why did it take? Why did they? Had an outpost in Gilgit-Baltistan in Pakistan occupied Kashmir after partition because they wanted to have surveillance over the Soviet nuclear program. Similarly, the U-2 planes were launched from Peshawar. Now, same thing with Bagram. They want to have a surveillance network over the whole Central Asia. Lock in the hydrocarbons. Afghanistan is the Saudi Arabia of lithium, which is essential for battery and the new age industry, right? And Pakistan is a willing accomplice who's willing to offer them everything. You don't have to go through bureaucracy. You just go to the army chief and he'll say yes, right? And at the same time, you get a bird's eye view not only on Iran, on India, on China, on Russia's underbelly. Plus, you have host of various actors which you can use in Pakistan's borderlands, tribal borderlands, like ISIS and other groups, which can be used to do pricking of neighborly countries and who are your adversaries. There have been cases where the Jundula group in Balochistan has been used to do bombings in Iran, where ISIS modules from Afghanistan have infiltrated to Central Asia and attacked Moscow. So, what is the certainty that these very modules will not attack Chinese engineers or go through or go into the Shanjing province? It is very much possible.
But then they are not concerned. They don't seem to be concerned about Gwadar. Because Gwadar is China's access to the Arabian Sea. They can do whatever they want. And that allows them to bypass the Malacca syndrome also.
Exactly.
But Chabahar is under threat. Once again, I don't understand this.
Chabahar is under threat because Iran has refused to provide nuclear fissile material back to America or IAEA, where that 430 kilos of fissile material went, which is 85% enriched, right, after that bombing raids. And Iran is refusing. Iran did the two biggest things which Iran had never done. During 1980s, when Khomeini came to power, by the way, Khomeini, if you read the declassified CIA file of Islam in Iran, they say he was in contact with the CIA since 1963. In Paris, he had even liaisoned with the US embassy in Paris. So they knew what he was going to do. He came into Afghanistan, Iran, and then the first thing it is what he culled the Today party, the Communist Party, right? The New York Times covered it. The CIA provided the kill list to do it, right? And Khomeini was instrumental in maintaining that neutrality when the Soviets sought a military pact like to 1929 defense pact with the Iranian Revolutionary Guard at that time, or the Mullah regime over there. The Iranians refused that, we do not want to renew that pact. They stayed neutral. So at that time, they allowed the regime to exist till the time Iran was neutral. Iran also went into JCPOA under President Obama, but then to the certain other vested interests in the Middle East, Donald Trump comes and rips apart JCPOA. He kills Qasem Soleimani, the general, crosses a red line which Americans have never crossed by attacking the Iranian generals or the top hierarchy of it. And now the IRGC says to the Mullah regime that, look, we trusted you. We sent our negotiators to talk to these Americans under Rouhani and Zarif, and look what we got. We trusted them. And that is exactly when they said, okay, be fine with it. We are going to embark on our own course. And then they went 5 months later, they signed in 2021, they signed an agreement with China. In January 2025, just 3 months before the Israeli attack on Iran, they signed a defense agreement with Moscow. So they tied up with those two powers, which America considers are the biggest adversaries. So they are not trying to do an Iraq out of Iran, but they want to do a regime change in Iran, create such kind of condition, and then launch a regime change from within where there are supporters and people overthrow the mullah regime.
I see the
And
same. They're trying to. Time is very short now. There's just a couple of minutes left. But I see this.
Yeah.
It could be a conspiracy theory sort of a thing. But the amount of pressure they're putting on India is getting political. They are blaming the Brahmins making money. Modi is a very good friend, but India is very tough. India is very hard. And the politicians, the opposition politicians are picking that up in India also, which is quite natural, which will happen. But they're giving them the opportunity. Then, Bangladesh, they have a military presence. Afghanistan, they want a military presence. China, they won't touch China. So where does that leave India?
Sir, India is in a very unique situation. First, it has to leverage its 1.4 billion people market base, which neither the big tech, nor the Wall Street, nor the Chinese traders, nor the Russian energy giants want to leave, nor even the Europeans want to leave. Europeans are quickly dialing up. It's very ironical. While America is targeting India for Russian oil, Europeans are very happy to buy the Russian oil and don't want to impose sanctions on us, right? Because the Europeans want to hedge against Americans with India. Like they don't want to be fully dependent. The French have a huge stake in Indian defense through Rafale and Safran deal. The Europeans want, the Germans want the submarine deal from India and the market access to the Indian economy. So we have to leverage that, number one. Number two, we must maintain our transactional trade reset with China must continue. There is no Indichini bye-bye. It's a transactional trade relationship which must continue whilst keeping a strict vigil on the borders. Number three, we must also continue to deepen our relationship with Russia on energy, on defense, do defense indigenization as well further. Engage more with the global south and then also engage with the Arab world in Saudi Arabia, in UAE to make sure that these defense pacts which are being formed are not part or not used as an anti-India front. Because those Arab nations also want to trade with us. The UAE, the Emiratis are big time invested. See, ultimately, sir, we have to understand the sovereign wealth fund from Qatar, Abu Dhabi, Saudi Arabia, they're invested big time in the Indian markets. They have, the Wall Street has, the Silicon Valley has joint ventures with Indian firms from tech to industrials. So we have to leverage the Wall Street. We have to leverage the Silicon Valley against vis-a-vis the White House. Look, we tell the White House, look, we tell the Silicon Valley Wall Street, we don't have any issue with you. You are welcome to come and invest in India. It is your White House which is creating problems.
True.
So you play smart. You play to your advantages. You play to your card. Do self-reliance. Go into defense. Go into power, renewable energy. Build up semiconductor base. Build up those industrial bases, and you form up your economy to such strength, or maybe double it by next 4-5 years, to an $8 trillion economy, become the world third largest, so that you become a pole but within yourself, and no one can ignore India on the world stage.
It's a new great game which is being played out, and we are blessed in the sense that we are in a position to play that game, because when the last game was played, we were not in a position. So on that note, I would like to thank you, Navroop ji, and it has been, it is very informative as your posts on XR, and I would like to keep coming back to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. My pleasure, sir.